Hello, hello. Welcome to APIsec University's first ever episode of What the Hack, where we dissect real-world API breaches to talk about what went wrong and offer pro tips on what you can do to ensure your APIs aren't vulnerable to the same exploit. So quick plug here. If you haven't been over to APIsecUniversity.com yet, go check it out. It is packed with courses covering all things API security, taught by API security experts like Corey J. Ball, the author of Hacking APIs, Jason Harmon, CTO of Stoplight, and our very own Dan Barahona, co-founder of APIsec University. And best of all, every course is free. All right, so back to What the Hack. One of the most popular portions of all of our APIsec U courses, as well as our live expert sessions, is when we dive deep into real-world API breaches. And so, What the Hack was born. This first hack is a juicy one. Most of you have probably heard of Bumble. And if you have, you know that the most popular portion of Bumble is their dating app. So let's talk about that one time when 95 million users' account information was able to be harvested. What the heck? Let me preface this one by saying that these vulnerabilities were actually and thankfully found by an independent researcher, Sanjana Sarda. All right, so what went wrong? Well, first of all, the Bumble API in question had no authentication. Broken auth or weak auth is number 2 on the OWASP API top 10 list for a reason, folks. So APIsec pro tip number 1, never rely on basic auth. HMAC is best for integrations, OAuth 2 is best for users. And maybe the best revelation here is that integrations and users should probably always have different types of authentication. So from there, the researcher discovered that Bumble used incremental user IDs, which is just to say that all 95 million users had an ID that was simply an incrementing digit, like say 5001, 5002, 5003, you get it. So this one might not feature on OWASP's top 10 list, but it's definitely a poor security practice. You want to make it difficult for people to enumerate or harvest your data. So APIsec pro tip number 2. Best practice here is to employ randomized identifiers, commonly called a UUID, with numbers, letters, so forth. That makes it difficult for the bad guys to increment through your database and harvest your accounts. All right, so once they were able to identify individual users, the level of detail in the data that researchers was able to access was just frightening. They were able to perform filter searches of the entire Bumble database by things like hobbies, the type of people that you're interested in, your education, online status, height, distance, and pretty much any other personal detail that a user would enter into their app. Here's where it gets really juicy. Remember that I just said distance? So a year after the initial vulnerabilities were found, a separate researcher, Robert Heaton, decided to see if he could employ an approach called trilateralization to see if he could find a user's location. And you can probably guess what comes next. Once he was in the API, it took only 10 seconds to run a script, and voila, he was able to pinpoint the exact geolocation of any user on the platform. Terrifying. Thankfully, this was found by researchers, and Bumble did address the vulnerability within just a matter of days. So APIsec pro tip number 3. Does any user ever need to be able to access data on another user and via an API, no less? Probably not, so don't allow it. Also, and this is a big one, learn from others' past mistakes. That flaw that allowed trilateralization was present and extremely well publicized in Tinder's API years before it was found in Bumble's. So next up is OWASP number 5, broken function level authorization. Beyond just being able to access user records, researchers actually had function level access, meaning they could access functions like update, delete, so forth. And this should never be available to an end user in the first place. In fact, the researcher was even able to do things like change an account type from, say, free to a paid account without ever entering a payment for any user on the platform. Which brings us to APIsec pro tip number 4, ensure you're employing multiple user types from an authorization perspective. That way you can control which users can perform certain actions. That's a wrap for our inaugural episode of What the Hack. Subscribe to our channel for more What the Hack videos and hop on down to the comments section for more resources or to share your own pro tips for API security with the community. To all of our APIsec U community out there and the rest of you security warriors, keep fighting the good fight and stay safe. Bye.